May 23, 1934. Wait 42 a.m. State Highway 154, Bienville Parish, Louisiana. The humidity in the Louisiana pine wood is a physical weight. It clings to the skin, smelling of damp earth, motor oil, and the metallic tang of a radiator under stress. Inside the stolen Ford V8, the air is thick with the scent of stale tobacco and cheap perfume. Bonnie Parker rests her head against the window, her eyes closed, while Clyde Barrow grips the wheel with calloused hands. They are tired. Not just lack of sleep tired, but a bone-deep exhaustion that comes from being the most hunted humans in America. Then, the world slows down. A black Lincoln Model L limousine is parked diagonally across the narrow dirt road. It's a wall of polished chrome and arrogance. Clyde slams on the brakes. The Ford skids, kicking up a blinding cloud of red dust. A man steps out of the Lincoln. He isn't a lawman. He's wearing a tailored charcoal suit that costs more than a Texas farm. His silver hair is slicked back, and his face is twisted in a mask of elite fury. This is Julian Vane, a high-ranking consultant for the Chicago outfit, though the couple in the Ford doesn't know that yet. "Do you have any idea whose time you're wasting?" Vane bellows, his voice cutting through the morning haze. Clyde reaches for the sawed-off shotgun between the seats, but Bonnie places a hand on his arm. "Not here, Clyde. Not for a flat tire and a suit." Vane reaches the Ford's window. He doesn't see the arsenal on the floorboards. He sees two dirt-poor grifters in a dusty car. He reaches in, his hand moving like a whip, and delivers a sharp, stinging slap across Clyde's face. The sound of skin hitting skin echoes louder than a gunshot in the quiet woods. "Back this heap up, boy," Vane sneers, "before I have you erased from the map." To understand how a billionaire's arrogance almost ended the most famous manhunt in history, we have to look at the hierarchy of 1930s crime. There are outlaws, and then there are owners. Vane owned people, but he didn't realize he just struck a cornered animal with nothing to lose. Clyde's grip on the steering wheel turns his knuckles white. The legend was built on blood, but it was fueled by resentment. The slap wasn't just an insult, it was a death warrant signed in ignorance. 20 minutes earlier, the Black Lake hideout. The morning had started with a bad omen. Bonnie had spilled the salt, and Clyde's leg, mutilated from his time in Easton Prison, was throbbing with a dull, rhythmic ache. They were supposed to meet the Methvin family, their only allies left in a world that was rapidly shrinking. "We're getting sloppy," Clyde muttered, loading a magazine into his Browning automatic rifle. He moved with a mechanical precision. For Clyde, guns weren't tools. They were extensions of his will. He knew the sound of every spring, the weight of every bullet. The context of their life was a series of narrow escapes and cold nights. The public saw them as Robin Hood figures, but the reality was grime, fear, and the constant smell of burnt gunpowder. They were the product of the Depression, two kids who chose a fast death over a slow starvation. While the Barrow gang was robbing grocery stores for pocket change, men like Julian Vane were industrializing crime. Vane was in Louisiana to negotiate a corridor for Canadian whiskey, a deal involving local senators and New Orleans dock bosses. He represented the new crime, corporate, silent, and protected by the law. Back on the road, Clyde looks up at Vane. The sting on his cheek is fading, replaced by a cold, calculating void. He sees the Lincoln's driver, a man with the unmistakable bulge of a 1911 under his jacket, stepping out with a hand on his holster. "Clyde," Bonnie whispers, her voice a low warning. She can see the shadow crossing his eyes. It's the look he had before the Easton breakout. It's the look of a man who has decided someone is going to die. Vane laughs, a dry, aristocratic sound. "Look at them. Pathetic. Move the car, or my man will move it for you." In the criminal underworld, respect is the only currency that doesn't devalue. Vane thought he was protecting his status. He didn't know he was standing in front of the two people who had turned disrespect into a national anthem. Clyde puts the Ford into gear, but he doesn't reverse. He inches forward until his bumper touches the Lincoln. The present, Highway 154. The metal-on-metal groan of the bumpers touching sends a jolt through Julian Vane. His face turns a deep, bruised purple. "You insolent little..." His driver, a seasoned enforcer named Sal, senses the shift in the air. Sal has seen a lot of punks, but there's something wrong here. The driver of the Ford isn't shaking. He's staring through the windshield with eyes that look like 2 holes burnt in a blanket. "Mr. Vane, get back in the car," Sal says, his voice tight. "No," Vane snaps. "I want this trash to know who I am." Vane doesn't understand that to Bonnie and Clyde, who someone is doesn't matter. They've stared down Texas Rangers and FBI agents. A man in a suit is just a bigger target. In the back of the Ford, hidden under a burlap sack, sits a mountain of firepower. They have over 3,000 rounds of ammunition. They are a mobile fortress. Contextually, the Barrow Gang was at their most dangerous when cornered. The world thinks of the final ambush, the 167 bullets, but the moments leading up to it were defined by these small, friction-filled encounters. The executive was used to people bowing. In the world of the Chicago outfit, a slap was a lesson. In the world of the West Dallas slums, a slap was a declaration of war. "I'm going to ask you one more time," Clyde says, his voice surprisingly soft. "Move the limo." Vane leans in, his expensive cologne filling the Ford's cabin, clashing with the smell of Bonnie's tobacco. "And if I don't, you'll do what? Shoot me? Do you have any idea how many governors I have in my pocket?" Bonnie reaches into the glove box. Her hand closes around a snub-nosed .38. She looks at Vane and smiles, a sad, crooked thing that doesn't reach her eyes. "Governors don't travel these roads, mister," Bonnie says. "Just ghosts." Sal, the driver, suddenly recognizes the man behind the wheel. He's seen the posters in the post office. His heart stops. 2 minutes after the slap. Sal's hand shakes as he reaches for his weapon. "Mr. Vane, Julian would get away from the car, now." Vane doesn't listen. Arrogance is a deafening veil. "Shut up, Sal. I'm teaching this peasant a—" "It's them, Julian!" Sal screams. "It's the Barrows!" The name hangs in the humid air like a guillotine blade. The forest seems to go silent. Even the cicadas stop their rhythmic buzzing. Julian Vane freezes. His hand, still raised from the slap, begins to tremble. The peasant he just struck isn't a peasant. He is the most violent fugitive in the Western world. Clyde Barrow doesn't smile. He just leans his head out of the window, the sunlight catching the scar on his temple. "For you got a heavy hand for a man who doesn't know how to use it," Clyde says. In the criminal hierarchy, Vane was a god, but here on a dirt road in Louisiana, away from his lawyers and his bodyguards, he is just meat. The effect of the legend takes hold. Vane realizes that his money cannot buy his way out of a Ford V8 filled with stolen bars. Behind them, another car appears on the horizon, a dust cloud signaling the arrival of more travelers. Clyde knows they can't stay. Every second they spend on this road is a second closer to Frank Harmer's posse. Clyde reaches out, grabs Vane by his silk tie, and pulls him flush against the car door. The executive's breath hitches. He can smell the gun oil on Clyde's skin. "The only reason you're still breathing," Clyde whispers, "is because I don't want to waste the noise. Move the car, now." Vane stumbles back, his legs turning to jelly. He falls into the red Louisiana dirt, his charcoal suit ruined. Sal scrambles to the Lincoln, fumbling with the keys, but as the Lincoln begins to move, Clyde sees something in the rearview mirror that changes everything. 08:50 a.m., the roadside. As the Lincoln clears the path, Clyde spots a glint of light in the tree line a mile back. It's not a civilian car. It's the reflection of sun on a high-powered scope. The executive hadn't just blocked the road, he had slowed them down long enough for the law to catch up. The irony is bitter. Julian Vane, a man who lived outside the law, had just accidentally become the law's greatest asset. "Clyde, the woods!" Bonnie screams. Clyde floors it. The Ford V8 screams to life, tires spitting gravel and dust. They roar past the Lincoln, nearly clipping Vane as he tries to stand up. But the damage is done. The roadblock wasn't just a physical barrier, it was a psychological break in their rhythm. For 2 years, they had lived on instinct. That instinct was now clouded by the rage of the encounter. The theme here is the cost of pride. Vane's pride made him slap a nobody. Clyde's pride made him stop to argue instead of shooting and moving. Now, both are paying. In the Lincoln, Vane is hyperventilating. "We have to go, Sal. They'll come back. They'll kill us." They're not the ones you should be worried about, Sal mutters, looking at the tree line. He knows what's coming. He knows that the men hunting Bonnie and Clyde don't ask questions. They shoot until the screaming stops. The narrative shifts to the perspective of the hunters. Frank Hamer, the legendary Texas Ranger, watches through his glasses. He saw the whole thing. He saw the man in the suit slap Clyde Barrow. "Who was that fool?" one of the deputies asks. "A dead man who hasn't stopped moving yet," Hamer replies. "But he gave us the window we needed." Hamer signals his men. The final hunt has begun, and the catalyst wasn't a snitch or a mistake. It was a rich man's ego. 10 minutes later, deep in the piney woods, the Ford V8 is flying down the logging roads, the suspension bottoming out on every dip. Bonnie is frantically checking the magazines. Her hands are steady, but her eyes are wide. "He saw us, Clyde. That man in the suit. He saw our faces. He'll talk." "He's a mobster, Bonnie," Clyde says, fighting the wheel. "He won't talk to the cops, but he'll talk to his people. By tonight, every outfit from New Orleans to Chicago will be looking for this car." This is the decision. They are caught between two fires. On one side, the law, on the other, the organized crime syndicates who don't want amateurs like the Barrows drawing heat to their territory. Vane wasn't just an executive, he was a gatekeeper. By slapping Clyde, he didn't just insult a man, he insulted a force of nature. Back at the original site, Frank Hamer's posse approaches the Lincoln. Vane is trying to brush the dirt off his suit, regaining his composure. "I want that man arrested," Vane shouts as Hamer approaches. "He assaulted me. Do you know who I am?" Hamer doesn't look at his ID. He doesn't care about his Chicago connections. He looks at the red mark on Vane's face, the shape of a hand. "You're lucky to be alive, son," Hamer says, his voice like gravel. "You just slapped the devil, and the devil is having a very bad day." Hamer realizes that the Barrows are rattled. They are driving faster, taking more risks. The Afeto Lender, legend effect, is working against them now. Their reputation makes them targets for everyone. "Load up," Hamer tells his men. They're heading for the Methvin farm. They're running home to die. 09:15 a.m. The Methvin approach. The car is overheating. Steam hisses from the hood of the Ford, mingling with the morning fog. Bonnie pulls out a small mirror and tries to fix her hair. It's a habit, a piece of her movie star fantasy that she refuses to let go of, even now. "Do you think they'll remember us, Clyde?" she asks quietly. "I mean, after." Clyde looks at her. He sees the girl from the cafe in Dallas, not the cigar-smoking gun moll the papers invented. "They won't be able to forget us, honey. Not after today." The consequence of the encounter with Vane is now clear. They had to take a detour to avoid the suit's potential backup, which put them right on the path Hamer predicted. It was a tactical error born of a moment's hesitation. In the criminal world, strategy is everything. Vane used strategy to build an empire. Clyde used strategy to survive. But Hamer used strategy to end stories. They reach the spot where Ivy Methvin's truck is supposed to be. Ivy, the father of their gang member Henry, is standing by the road with a flat tire. It looks like a repeat of the encounter with Vane. Clyde slows down. His heart is pounding. The slap on his face still stings, a physical reminder of his vulnerability. He scans the woods. "Is it a trap?" Bonnie whispers. Clyde looks at Ivy. The old man looks terrified. Behind them, the Lincoln is long gone, but the ghost of Julian Vane's arrogance remains. If they hadn't been delayed by the executive, they would have passed this spot 10 minutes ago, before the posse was in position. "It's Ivy," Clyde says, easing off the brake. "He's family." Chicago 2 days later, the outfit's boardroom. While the world focuses on the woods of Louisiana, Julian Vane sits in a dimly lit office. His face is still swollen. Across from him sits a man whose name is never spoken aloud. "You slapped a Barrow," the man says. "It isn't a question." "He was in my way," Vane defends, though his voice lacks its usual steel. "I didn't know." That's the problem, Julian. In our business, not knowing is the same as dying. You drew a Texas Ranger's eyes to a road we use for $3 million worth of movement a month because you couldn't wait 5 minutes. The moral is heavy. Power doesn't make you invincible. It makes you a larger target. Vane thought he was at the top of the food chain. He forgot that there are people who don't play by the rules of money. The outfit doesn't forgive heat. By provoking the Barrows, Vane ensured that the police presence in Louisiana would be suffocating for months. "I can fix it," Vane pleads. "It's already fixed," the man says, sliding a newspaper across the table. The headline is massive: Bonnie and Clyde slain. Vane looks at the photo of the Ford V8 riddled with holes. He sees the body of the man he slapped, slumped over the wheel. He should feel victorious. Instead, he feels a cold shiver. He realizes that the only reason he isn't in that car is because Clyde Barrow showed a split second of mercy, and the Chicago outfit doesn't believe in mercy. Return to May 23, 1934. 09:15 a.m. The ambush. Clyde stops the car next to Ivy Methvin. He leans out to ask if he needs help. In that split second, the world explodes. The moment sonoro is a deafening, rhythmic thud, thud, thud of 6 lawmen firing automatic rifles and shotguns simultaneously. The glass of the Ford shatters into a million diamonds. The metal skin of the car screams as it's torn apart. Bonnie's scream is cut short by the first volley. Clyde never even had a chance to reach for his guns. The irony is cruel. The man who stood up to the entire US government was finally brought down because he slowed down for a friend, a delay caused by the friction of a rich man's ego an hour earlier. The smoke clears. The smell of cordite is overwhelming. The lawmen approach the car, their boots crunching on the gravel. Frank Hamer looks at Clyde. He sees the red mark on his cheek, now turning blue in death. The slap. "He died with an insult on his face," Hamer remarks. "The consequence is final. The legend is sealed. The news will travel across the wire services within the hour. The rich executive will become a footnote, a man who almost died and instead became the catalyst for the end of an era. But legends have a way of following you home." 6 months later, a penthouse in New York. Julian Vane can't sleep. Every time he closes his eyes, he sees that dusty Ford. He feels the sting in his palm from when he struck Clyde Barrow. He lost his position in the outfit. He was retired early, stripped of his assets, his protection, and his pride. He's a man living in fear, waiting for a ghost to knock on his door. He walks to the window, looking out over the city. He thought he was the protagonist of his own story. He realized too late that he was just a minor character in someone else's tragedy. "Ninguém sabia até ser tarde," he whispers to the empty room. The theme of reputation is the final note. Bonnie and Clyde died in a hail of lead, but their names are etched into history. Julian Vane will die in a quiet room, forgotten, a man whose only claim to fame was a moment of stupidity on a Louisiana back road. The cost of that slap was everything. It cost Bonnie and Clyde their lives, and it cost Vane his soul. In the end, crime isn't about the money or the guns. It's about the friction between those who have everything and those who have nothing. And when those two worlds collide on a narrow road, nobody wins. The screen fades to black. The sound of a single distant gunshot echoes. Would you have kept your cool if you were in that Ford, or would you have pulled the trigger right then and there? If you want more deep dives into the secret encounters of history's most famous outlaws, hit that like button and subscribe. Comment below. Was Julian Vane the real reason they got caught?